with regard to psychological therapies, our approach is very much a technical one. With regard to anything, our approach is very much a technical one. And what this means is that we are very much concerned with the what and the how. So, what is the therapy in question? How do we use it? How do we best deliver it? And that's our focus. That's where all of our focus is. And that means we've got a blind spot. Everything rational, purposeful has a blind spot. If it didn't, then there couldn't be any rationality and there couldn't be any purposefulness. So we can't get away from that blind spot when we're operating in the rational mode. So the blind spot here is that we never consider the why. We consider the what, the how, but we don't look at the why. And it doesn't even make sense to us to say that we should or that we could look at the why in therapy. We assume that it's just taken for granted. If I am suffering from mental distress, then the why is that I want to get free from that mental distress, get relief from the mental distress. And that's very, very obvious. So you could say, well, that's why we don't think about the why, because the why is so obvious. Why the hell would we need to think about it? But there's more to it than that. With most of our technical procedures, all of our technical procedures, we have a why. If I'm extracting aluminium from bauxite, the why is because I want aluminium to sell or to build things or to do whatever we do with aluminium. Obviously, we do a lot of things with aluminium, so that's all straightforward. Now, in the process of extracting aluminium from bauxite or any metal from any metal ore, it doesn't matter if we have a fundamental agenda. It doesn't really affect the outcome. So the outcome isn't agenda sensitive. But in therapy, it is. So that's why it's important to realize that these are two very different worlds. The external world of physical processes and the internal world of psychological or psychic processes. I don't quite like the word psychological because it sounds like you're putting something in a box. It's a little bit demeaning or something like that. But in therapy, the agenda is very, very important. So to give an example of this, or to explain this a little bit better, we can move slightly sideways and talk about meditation or mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is used an awful lot for therapy, so we're not really jumping that far, but there is a bit of a jump anyway, despite that, because mindfulness comes from a different tradition and a different way of looking at the world. It's not quite so targeted and purposeful as we in the West think it is. So supposing that I am practicing meditation, this is very, very agenda sensitive. It really matters a lot what my agenda is, what the reason is for me doing what I'm doing, which is meditating or trying to meditate or going through the motions of meditating, hoping that something good will happen from that, or I might become free from my ego or free from my thoughts, which would be great. Now, the problem here is that precisely that if I have a hope that I can become free from my claustrophobic, grubby little ego. Everyone wants to become free from their claustrophobic, grubby little egos. Or if I can become free from my thoughts, then that would be really great, and that's what I'm hoping for. But because I'm hoping for that, that spoils the meditation practice. It contaminates it, it kind of ruins it. And the reason we can say this is because behind everything lies this thought-created agenda. I hope that this can free me from X or free me from Y. Now, a thought-created agenda is thought, obviously enough. And so I've got thought behind the process which is supposed to free me from thought. So obviously that's never going to work. Thought's there directing the show in the background. And thought is taking a back seat, but he's there. He's very much there, directing things. Which is to say, there is very much an agenda there the whole time, that I will be benefited in some way. Why else am I paying the money to sign up on the mindfulness course? Why else am I coming to the sessions or coming to the place where I learn mindfulness? It's because I want to benefit from it. That's a pretty hard one to get out of. Like, it's a well-known dilemma, if we call it that. But it's significant. So we could say that practicing meditation is good for us, and there's lots of research which seems to indicate very strongly that it does. And also, if you talk to people that practice mindfulness meditation, they'll probably tell you that it is good for them. And more importantly, if you know people who have been practicing meditation for a long time, you can probably tell that it's good for them. You can feel it. You can feel that that it's doing them good in some way, and that's more significant or more telling than what they actually say, because we can, after all, and we often do, deceive ourselves with regard to things like that. Yes, I'm getting better. I'm getting better every day, etc., etc. It's a common illusion. It's a common illusion because it's a nice illusion. Because generally we're the same every day, and that's unbearable. So we try and think that we're improving every day by doing all the things that help to improve us, going on self-improvement courses, etc. So here we can say we put a lot of thought into, attention onto the how and the what. So the what is mindfulness meditation, and the how is all the things you learn if you sign up for a course or read a book or see a YouTube video or tutorial. And that's great. We can grasp that. If we've got enough perseverance, we can grasp that and we can do a pretty good job of it. But what we're not seeing on the whole is that the why is very important. And as long as we've got this big agenda behind it all, we're never getting away from thought. We're never getting away from the thinking mind. And actually thought, or the thinking mind, is actually dictating everything we do as usual. It's just upped its game. It's getting a bit fancy. It's using all the lingo. So in other words, it's trying to redeem itself by upping the game and talking about things at a totally different level, but it's the same old game. So this is very, very pertinent when it comes to using mindfulness, and even the term using kind of shows how that we're thinking about it in this agenda-based way, because we're anxious or because we're suffering from OCD or because we're just generally suffering. So this suffering, the desire to do something about this suffering, is our very big agenda. Naturally it is, quite understandably it is. Obviously we can't hardly blame anyone for that. Of course I'm going to have a big agenda to escape my suffering if I'm suffering. Of course I'm going to hope to escape my pain if I'm in pain, because that's what pain is. It's the very intense desire not to be feeling whatever we're feeling, which is because it's not good. So it kind of goes hand in hand, really. The desire to escape pain goes hand in hand with pain. So we can't be blamed for that. But it does need to be understood that if we are to genuinely practice mindfulness or meditation, then we have to go beyond that goal. We have to leave that goal or that agenda or that hope to one side as we do our practice, just the same as we would leave everything else to one side, all of our other hopes, our ideas about what we're going to do after we leave the session, our thoughts about what we did before. The whole point is to go beyond them, have a little bit of space, the space that we find when we do go beyond our habitual concerns and motivations. So if we can do that, that would be fine. But if I have got an ongoing chronic mental health condition, it's very hard for me to go beyond that. It's an extra difficult thing because it's with me the whole time, and therefore my wish to escape it is there with me the whole time. Even if it's not a wish that I actually realistically believe in, I still wish that I wasn't going through what I'm going through, obviously. So this needs to be emphasized more, because if we don't pay attention to this why am I doing this? We're not going to get anywhere, because we think it's all about techniques, we think it's all about technicalities. In other words, if I get my technique good enough and if I get the technicalities spot on correct, that's going to do the job. But it isn't going to do the job at all, because it's the why that determines everything. Even if I was sloppy about my technique, sloppy about the technicalities, downright sloppy, it wouldn't matter so much if I didn't have this big agenda behind it. Because the important thing, as I keep saying, is to go beyond the agenda. Doesn't matter. You could say that I'm doing a very crappy type of a meditation. But if I'm going beyond my agenda, it isn't crappy at all. It's the real thing. It's just what I needed. So it is relatively easy to sort out the how and the what. Straightforward. If I want to know the how, I go and learn the how. That's straightforward. So we think, great, here I am. Here's a great tool. I'll work out how to use it, and that's great. But it isn't, because it's more subtle than that. We brush over that, we skip over that, we sweep it under the carpet, this question of why. We think it doesn't matter. And so we think it's all very unsubtle, and it's just a matter of doing the thing. Our poor little brains are fixated on doing the thing. We think we can't get away from this idea that it's doing the thing. But it isn't doing the thing, it's getting away from the agenda to think we need to do the thing, or we want to do the thing, that there's any point at all in doing the thing, or any help in it, or any benefit whatsoever. So then that's the subtle side of things. And when we come to that, we then have to ask ourselves, how Well, we could ask ourselves, not that it would help us to ask ourselves this, but we could ask ourselves, how do I change my why? How do I get rid of this big agenda? How do I get a more wholesome, spontaneous motivation, a more genuine, authentic motivation, rather than this pure reflex of I have to get away from the pain or I have to improve myself? So then we could think about that, and then we'd realize sooner or later that that's not a question we can ask, because how is always about technicalities. So we're asking for the technicalities about how to get away from technicalities, and that isn't going to work. So there's no how. There is no how, and yet until we can change the way we're looking at the world, all the meditation and mindfulness in the whole world isn't going to help us any. So what seems straightforward, doing the mindfulness thing or the meditation thing, what seems straightforward within our Western context of our Western thinking isn't straightforward, because we're faced with this implacable enigma again. Here I am in this particular mind state of wanting to escape the pain or wanting to obtain the good thing. That's the same mind state, it isn't two different mind states. And anything I do on the basis of this mind state, the mind state of attachment, as they say in the East, anything I do on the basis of this attachment is attachment, isn't getting away from attachment, it's just that same mind state repeated over and over again, trying to jump over itself, which it can't. So we think we might have found an easier route, but we haven't, because no matter what route we try to use, whether it's mindfulness or meditation or yoga or whatever the hell it is, it could be anything at all, brings us right back to this point where we're confronting the impossibility of deliberately changing our mental state. So the next bit is as opaque to us as ever, because you don't find people talking about this so much, if at all. I personally don't notice people talking about this very much. They talk about the things that are easy to talk about and straightforward to talk about, but not so much about this. And although we can't fix it, it's important to acknowledge it and know that it is there, to know that this difficulty is there. And actually, if we can be very, very clear that this difficulty is there and there's no getting around it, that is in fact already a change in our mind state. To see the limitations of attachment is already to go beyond attachment, because normally we keep on thinking, yes, I can do it, yes, I can do it. So the very, very clear understanding that I can't do it, or I can't do it from this, when I've got this attitude, when I've got this attitude to either avoid pain or gain benefit, is a very transformative insight. So there is a point to talking about it and getting it clear in our heads. But it's a very difficult thing, because if I'm in pain, to suddenly do something, not because I think it's going to help me, not because I think it's going to free me from the pain, but for no reason at all, just to do it, means that I have to leave to one side this intense desire that I have to get away from the pain or to get away from the fear. And that's a very, very profound change, because normally I can't ever leave that agenda, as I was saying earlier. So this is a baffling thing, really. Pain and desire. two sides of the same coin, have such an immense hold on us. So how the hell do we transcend pain, stroke, desire? And it's no good just saying, well, meditate a hell of a lot, because if we do meditate a hell of a lot out of our desire to benefit ourselves, it's not going to benefit us. There's a guy called Stephen Batchelor who wrote a book about how meditation came to the West. And he was saying the very first time he meditated, it was fantastic. It was like a moment for him. He realized that this is what he wanted. This is what life was all about. Not all the rest of the crap, but this was it. This really was it. So then, if I remember correctly, he runs away to, doesn't run away, goes to a Zen monastery in Japan and signs up for however long, enlists or enrolls, or whatever it is you do. And so there he was, month after month, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, doing tremendously arduous, proper Zen type sitting meditation for hours on end, and throwing himself into it because he knew this was the right thing. And month after month after month, he's getting no closer. He could even be getting further away. It's just not working out for him. And eventually, of course, he gets the insight. Maybe he chats to the Roshi a bit. He gets the insight, yeah, you want it too bad. You're trying too hard. You actually want this. So then he's understanding this thing that it's no good wanting it. You have to transcend your wanting. You have to put your wanting to one side. And then I think things got better for him. Things would have to get better once you're able to put your wanting to one side. As soon as you can do that, they have, by definition, got better. If you can do that, that's kind of like a miracle, really. A naturally occurring miracle. It doesn't need divine intervention. It's a naturally occurring miracle that happens, but a very profound change to take place. So, as far as I can see, the big problem is that we are embedded in this purposeful, rational, purposeful culture, which everything is about technicalities, and nothing is about quiet reflection on the absurdity of our habitual mindset, or the absurdity of always wanting this and wanting that. So that meditation and mindfulness have been subsumed by this world, this rational, purposeful world that we live in, and they've turned it into another technique, one more technique. So the whole thing's been very, very effectively hijacked. And I know some people have been saying this for years now, but it is worth bearing it in mind that, and to use Jung's phrase, meditation has become the right tool in the hands of the wrong man. Okay, thanks for watching.